Jurisprudence is the science of law, quote unquote, the science of law, and the philosophy of law, quote unquote. So jurisprudence is the science and the philosophy of law. And thus lex, which means law, refers to the formal science and analytical study of the nature of law, ancient and modern. So keep that in mind. As an example of lex origins, we can consider natural law or nature's law. Now, natural law is referenced also as related to those ancient philosophical customs and traditions coming down from the archaic Sabian or Sabi Gnostics. These lex or law principles composing jurisprudence philosophies has origins coming down from the ancient natural peoples, Sabi. So Saba is capital Saba or Sabi. Sabah is collectively the customs, the traditions, and the people of the ancient world, which you will commonly be told of as Hikupta or Egypt, which is the collective of the Asiatic African world. Collective, not just the area geographically referred to as Egypt today on your general Mapamundi constructs. It is the conglomeration of the ancient people of the hair of wool or hair like lamb's wool, who are the founders of civilization of the ancient Canaanite Moabite nation, etc. That is the founder and who are the founders of civilization and the philosophies of jurisprudence that come down to us today. Now, so these lex law principles composing jurisprudence philosophies has origin coming down from the ancient natural peoples, Sabi. Now, the men whose hair is like that of wool, the Gnostics, those who bear the knowledge, the one known in history as Sabian or Sabian. Now, natural law is designated in Moorish Latin as jus natural. That's jus natural. So Jus, natural. Nature's law and nature's God is a traditional phrase derived from and is related to natural law. Now, therefore, lex nemini facit injurium means or has the meaning of law does injury to no one. Now, nature's law relates to the divine workings of nature and the disciplined studies associated thereto. Therefore, the rules of nature do not conflict with the nature of humanity because humans, hominidae, are a part of nature. Lex and jurisprudence being the science that treats of quote unquote positive law is presented as jurisprudence. Jurisprudence, in the proper sense of its etymology, is the science of law, and as such is a specified science supporting civilization and ascertains the principles on which rules of law and justice-oriented processes are based. Such established rules and customs are deemed for proper usages and due process principles of law and of right. And this is known via Moorish Latin as jus et de jure. So juris et de jure, or irrefutable presumption, quote unquote, and the preservation of this principle or juris et de jure principle is adopted in modern jurisprudence and is known as stare decisis. Now, most of you who study jurisprudence know that stare decisis is essentially those established principles of law which are irrefutable and in relationship to justice of the peace principles or construction of law or any judicial structure cannot be presumed to be other than that which is right and are irrefutable and cannot be rebutted. And there, again, we establish that lex nemini facit injurium, the law does injury to no one. And this lesson, or the lesson, follows that law and history has a binding relationship. And thus, law, lex, and history go together and are bound together as a studied discipline. Corruption of either of these disciplines constitutes crimes against humanity. And if one would seek justice, quote unquote, in matters of civilization at Midgard Earth, go to those who know law. Now, in the true sense of origin of the phrase enforcement, quote unquote, of the Constitution, we look at and consider the archaic nature's law, lex principles of our ancient mothers and fathers, and the keeping of and preservation of those lex principles as valid and de jure guidance for human government order or structure makeup for government. And government therefore is structured on these ancient divine principles and are put in place in a structured manner or written constructed format or oral traditions and customs for the preservations of divine rights that exist by divine nature with humanity, and in their nature are not what you call an ens legis construct, but are actually based on the principles of the studies of nature and then put into written form to formulate the makeup or the construct of government principles. Therefore, again, when we look at what would be called de jure or legitimate government, we will always look at the principles of lex in order to see or to recognize whether or not those who are operating such government are in harmony with nature's God and nature's law, i.e., therefore lex injures or the law injures no one. And this is why when you study ancient African Asiatic culture, you will see the cosmological origins or natures or phrases that always have to do with the ephemerides construct of the nature of the heavens or star structure. Just like you'll look at metrology being used for the construction or the layout of cities, of pathways on the earth, of the ley lines on the earth, or where our ancient mothers and fathers built mounds, why they did, at what are also known as nova points or points of high energy. Also, where ancient temples were built, why they were built at certain places according to metrology or the laws of nature. And so you will look at the abstract the nature of why certain concrete things were done with what you will refer to as the spiritual or the unseen or the breath aspect of construct. And so when you're looking at African Asiatic culture, and the principles of jurisprudence always look for the feminine, masculine principles that are rooted in everything, in the language, in the names of lands, etc. One example that you may look at before our Moorish mothers and fathers were defeated, when you're looking at Al-Andalus, which after the defeat of our mothers and fathers, the Moors who ruled after our defeat of Al-Andalusia was named Spain. And so when you look at Spain, you look at Andalus and Al-Andalusia. So you have a masculine and a feminine name. And a lot of times when you're looking at history and jurisprudence, it is important for you to remember the duality of the nature of both the linguistic forms and the names of lands, etc., and the nature of things in harmony with nature, so as to reduce the confusion when you're doing research or analytical studies on the culture. And very often, because after the hybrid Romans took over, and you look at this area after or during the area of what is known as the Napoleonic Wars, when the hybrid Europeans start taking over the original Aboriginal Phoenicians operations or homeland that you call Iberia, or the Iberian Peninsula, which is now known as Europe. Why and how they corrupted the culture and constructively reduced or removed the feminine aspects of both law, the construct of government, how government is properly run in harmony with nature, um, the real meaning as to why the land in vexillum, or flags or standards, why they're not spoken of in their feminine aspect, etc., which is the origin or the construct of the womb, or the Ankh system, and why that means government, and why that harmonizes with government or the constitution or the makeup, or even when you're dealing with the silica salts, etc., that construct the body, and how and why. And this would be the system or the Ankh, which is a symbol of the womb, and this would be the uterus, the left and the right fallopian tubes, and the birth canal, and this would be your first holy cross. And keep in mind that holy means the sun. All right, so Halig is Sanskrit, which means the sun. And so because the offspring of the womb, etc., or the mother, and she produces herself, which is the feminine egg, and then she converts the feminine egg within the womb and gives birth to sons. And this is where, from this principle, the metaphor is mother and son, or ma son study, or masonry, which is the cosmo operation of this in government, cosmology, and thus metrology, and thus how buildings are constructed on the earth in line with the layout of the stars, i.e., metrology. Thus, the constitution of city constructs and nation constructs on earth in harmony with nature is designed to harm no one. Therefore, lex nomini injurium. The law injures no one. It's in harmony with nature. So that we can aid ourselves in getting back to the principles of our ancient mothers and fathers, because we have a lot of things to fix at Midgard. Why I just took this little excerpt from the Superliminal and actually did some bullet points on that to present what we're talking about tonight. And this is also because a lot of the demonology or dark side magic that has been adopted from ancient Babylonia, i.e., the dark side of things, has been ruling Midgard for so many centuries. It has caused so much havoc on the planet Earth, and the people are looking for light, or looking for remedy, or looking to construct order of government, or go back to the principles in order to fix things. And they're running into a lot of opposition. And as Dr. Naila was mentioning earlier, truth is under attack all across this planet, and people need to know why, etc. And so, but they also need to have a knowledge of origin of things, so they themselves can take responsibility and get into the order of operations, or the order of the day, to the true nativity of the people of Earth, both the nativity of the body and the nativity of the Constitution, principles of law, lex, in the nature of nature, so that they're not confused with the ens legis operations of quote unquote color of law, and have a foundation to look at so that they can separate the wheat from the chaff, or the real from the fake, or the prima facie from the de jure, the de facto from the de jure. And that's again why we took this little excerpt from the MST of A degrees to share with you. And this is derived, that little section is derived from the supraliminal, that's lesson book number 12, which you haven't seen. To share with you tonight, because we're in this process all across the planet, and you'll see more and more people becoming what they would generally used as awake or reawakening. And it's actually a workings of nature, a divine workings of nature that's really taking place on the planet, so that we can catch up with what's going on. And those who are still a little sleepy, a lot of work that's taking place across the planet with all of humanity of trying to help in the great missionary work of uplifting fallen humanity, that you might have some sense of rational guidelines by which you can throw off the BS and start getting some work done. The other thing that I was talking to Dr. Naila, or most of you all know Dr. Naila is Dr. G. And a lot of you through the weeks and through this last couple of years have been dealing with or following her. A lot of times when she's traveling, she'll have casual conversations with you and share a lot of her insight. Most of you who know her know that she's a poetess. And when you read some of her poetry, you can kind of sense that she's a really a deep thinker, but she's like one of those kind of deep thinkers that thinks naturally deep. It's not like, like some people, they seek to analyze things or look at things deeply, and they work at it. Well, she doesn't work at it. She just does it naturally. And many of you who've had the opportunity to ride with Dr. G, and when you're looking at the official office hours of Dr. G, and you pick through some of the philosophical statements that she makes, you'll really begin to recognize actually some of those ancient Sabi principles, etc. That's actually been a part of her life. And as she's grown in her cognizance, you will see that she's going deeper into the philosophies with the comprehension of their true metaphorical meanings, etc. And one of the things that you recognize taking place on the planet, almost all of us are going through that process of reawakening. And so again, we share that with you. And as I was talking to her earlier, because a lot of times when you present some of these fundamental, because these are really fundamental principles, any scholars who do any research in any of the disciplines of civilization on Earth find this stuff. This is not complex stuff. This is easily findable. I mean, this is findable. This is not deep research. These are basic principles that any scholar finds anyway. And people with PhDs and adeptus degrees in all societies, because all of your philosophical societies on the planet and your governmental societies have what are known as quote unquote adept chambers or adept orders, etc. And adept simply means those who are experts in the philosophies, etc. And this is common all over the world. So don't look at it this as, oh, this adept chamber only belongs to this organization or that organization. It belongs to all the philosophical organizations at Midgard. Whether they're using it positively or negatively, they know the rules. So let's get over that. For those who always make excuses about the people with all these grand titles and all these lettered titles who when pressured with the revelations of truth, pretend that they don't know these things or that they never heard of them. Or, whoa, I didn't know that we were messing over you. Yes, they did. Yes, they did. The problem that you have today is that the truth is becoming known to the common people as the metaphorical or the anthropological Jesus Yeshua presented, where he took the truth to the common people after he went to the Sadducees and etc., the Pharisees, etc., who were corrupting everything. And that's really what's ruling today. Though those would be known today as the members, the Roman Curia members, and particularly those of the crown, quote unquote, which are known also as the Circle Church and Chancery, which is also known as British Accredited Registry, which are also known as your lawyers and your attorneys, which are also rejected in the constitutional makeup of the order of modern government, and why they don't teach what you would call the supremacy clause in the adopted constitution for contemporary operations of government, etc. Whereas they cannot hold lawful office in a constitutional government, which is also why you're having the problems that you're having today with the corruptions and the wars against the people under the operations of people who you thought were your government, thought was your government, who are really your enemies, who've been ruling over you. And a lot of the corruption and the miseries that humanity is suffering today has operative origin with those persons, etc. And so again, we share with you a little bit of that. Now, and as I was saying earlier, I was talking to Dr. G and Brother Wayne earlier about a lesson, and this is one of the exposés of the conquest intent at North America from colonial U.S. democracy. And this is actually, and many of you scholars and teachers and principals of schools, etc., know this, but they don't usually show this to the people, particularly since most of them operate under the Rockefeller institutions, etc., whose missionary work has been to overthrow the fundamental principles of jurisprudence in relationship to constitutional enforcement and its ancient origin of Sabi or Saba, and implying that it is from the devil or that it injures humanity when actually it's the foundation of civilization, etc. And so this is actually sharing with you some of the questions of a completed 8th grade. Understand, we're not talking about high school. We're not talking about college. We're not talking about university. We're talking about 8th grade. And this is from the 1800s. And we'll share a little bit of that with you. Dr. Naila, you was asking me a question earlier.
No, I just have a thought with regard when you just said an interjection. Mm-hmm. When you mentioned whose missionary work is XYZ. Historically or traditionally, we have been given the false, I guess,
or misdirected.
We've been misdirected to think that anything that was a missionary was a doer of good.
Yes.
But even though the prophet said, help me in my missionary work.
My great missionary work.
But there are missionaries of doom and death and all of those other things, just as there are so allegedly, people who are going out. As a matter of fact, most of who we thought down through the ages were missionaries of help were actually going into traffic.
They was missionaries of demonology.
There you go.
And this does not exclude others, so let's not get that. But most specifically, the great political platform for the missionary work of din and doom is known as the Democratic Party of the Kaiklos, or the KKK, etc., that's operating in the Western Hemisphere, although what their counterpart, which is really not their counterpart in the modern world, known as the Republican Party, together are two sides of the same coin of operatives who have been spearheading, from an enforcement perspective, the military forces of Rome to conquer the world under unum sanctum and the doctrine of discovery, while pretending to be a legitimate government, particularly since 1861, which most of you already know. And again, as we were talking earlier, to demonstrate to you how many people who have been subjected to the operations of John D. Rockefeller and Frederick T. Gates in their psychological psychic attack construct known as the General Education Board to maintain the operations of the dark, etc., under the guise of good, which is why most of you who already know, particularly those who care about the children, because a lot of people say that, but, well, you can take that with a grain of salt, who send their children to the operatives of Rome under the guise of education, will send them to the operative Roman Curia, Circle Church and Chancery, members of the Rockefeller Foundation, known as the General Education Board, established in 1902, for the purpose of dumbing down humanity under the guise of uplifting humanities. Keep that in mind. However, just to give you support or a comparative example for study, to just demonstrate how even your so-called college grads, many of them would fail this test, which was given to 8th graders in 1800s, etc., as an example, because people always, many, not always, but many people, when presented with these fundamental principles, will say, oh man, that's that Moorish stuff, as opposed to recognizing that this is just simply a research of facts of the human walk on the planet of the earth and is available to anyone. Here we go, 8th grade test questions. Now, the following we're going to share with you just to give you some examples and food for thought. And for many of you who are teachers and instructors and motivational instructors, this would give you something to work with to encourage people to take responsibility of themselves and of their seed or offspring, and take them out of the hands of Rome, who they've had faith in for quite some time, to their own injury. And this will be an example. This is transcript, word for word, of an 8th grade school test final exam. And this, for those of you who are researchers, many of you who are teachers and instructors know of this, but for those who don't, we're sharing it with you today. And this is from Salina, Kansas in 1895. And these are questions, and the questions would be presented in grammar with time presented as 1 hour, arithmetic with time presented as 1.25 hour, of United States history, 45 minutes, orthography, 1 hour, geography, 1 hour, and health, 45 minutes, as an example. Keep in mind, this is 8th grade. So I'm going to present to you the questions that are in this test for 8th graders in 1895 to show you the damage that has been done to the people of the land since 1902 with the Rockefeller and Gates Foundation operations under the guise of uplifting people, i.e., with their establishment of the mind control system and corruption of law via the General Education Board. Questions, 8th grade final exam, Salina, Kansas, 1895. Grammar, number 1, give 9 rules for the use of capital letters. Number 2, name the parts of speech and define those that have no modifications. Number 3, define verse, stanza, and paragraph. Number 4, what are the principal parts of a verb? Give principal parts of do, lie, lay, and run. Number 5, define case. Illustrate each case. Number 6, what is punctuation? Give rules for principal marks of punctuation. Number 7 to 10, write a composition of about 150 words and show therein that you understand the principal use of the rules of grammar. That is in grammar. Then arithmetic. Time 1.25 hours. 1. Name and define the fundamental rules of arithmetic. 2. A wagon box is 2 foot deep, 10 foot long, 3 foot wide. How many bushels of wheat will it hold? Number 3. If a load of wheat weighs 3,942 pounds, what is its worth at 50 cents per bushel, deducting 1,050 pounds for tare? That's T-A-R-E, tare. Number 4. District number 3 has a valuation of $35,000. What is the necessary levy to carry on a school 7 months at $50 per month and have 104 for its incidentals? Number 5, find cost of $6,700